Welcome to the Ironwood Gym. We are nearing the end of 2025. In fact, we're just in the last couple days of the year. And the end of the year is a great time to look back at your training and objectively reflect on how your training has went. In fact, I feel that this is an essential part of training. Actually evaluating your training for any serious lifter, any competitive lifter, taking the time to objectively evaluate your training gives you a sense of direction moving forward. Okay? Now, the key thing that I said there was objectively. You can't just pick the things that you like to do and say you don't like to do this and base your training off of that. You actually need to think about what actually helped you make progress or what was actually holding you back. So in doing this, now I was a competitive lifter for 16 years, competitive power lifter. I no longer compete, but I still try to train. Even though my numbers aren't what they used to be, I still try to train like a competitive lifter. That's just the way I prefer to train. So when I get to the end of the year, I take time and I reflect on how things have went. And I'm going to take you through the steps that I go through, the questions that I ask myself, and utilize my training over the previous 6 months to a year to help you understand what I actually am thinking. Do these questions need to necessarily be the same for you? No, but you do need to take that time to evaluate how your training has went. So the first thing that I ask myself is probably the most simple question you can ask. Did I make progress or did I not make progress? And looking at my lifting, of course, any power lifter or any serious strength athlete, they're going to base it off of numbers, right? They're going to base, did my squat go up? Did my clean go up? Did my bench go up? Whatever the case may be, whether they're a power lifter, weightlifter, CrossFit athlete, or just a serious gym goer that cares about their numbers going up. So did my squat go up, which I only do the box squat. I very rarely squat without a box anymore. But did my box squat go up? No, it did not. There are reasons for that, which I will tie into later. But no, my box squat did not go up over the previous 6 months. In fact, it went down. My bench press, yes, it went up. I had a 20-pound improvement from 6 months ago. My numbers were a little bit down 6 months ago, unexpectedly. But in the last 6 months, I had a 20-pound improvement. The deadlift is a little bit harder to discuss because I really did not structure my training over the previous 6 months to improve my deadlift. My deadlift was very down over the past 6 months, which I can't even explain, or 6 months ago. And until part of the way through this training cycle, I really didn't know what I needed to do to improve my deadlift. So not the smartest thing to do, but I really just didn't try. I focused all my effort, and I had some deeper reasons for doing that. I focused all my effort on the squat and the bench. Worked out very well for the bench. Unfortunately, it did not for the squat. Okay, so that leads me to my second point, my second question that I'm going to ask myself. Okay, what worked and what didn't? Okay, this gets complicated because I did not make improvement in my squat. But I have to consider, why didn't I make that improvement? And my squat training actually went very well. It went all good all the way until the last 3 to 4 weeks of training. Okay, and then from external outside of training reasons, I became very worn out and very tired, especially in my legs. I was on my feet a lot, probably 11 to 12 hours a day, and my squat suffered because of it. My numbers that I was hitting were very good up until the last few weeks. Okay, and unfortunately, I was not able to recover enough. I don't think I was actually weaker. I really don't, and I don't like to say that because the numbers weren't there, but the numbers that I was hitting all the way through my Circumax phase were good. Okay, even when I worked up at the end of my Circumax phase, now I was barely hanging on at that point, but I still hit good numbers. And then the numbers on my heavier day did not work out. Okay, they started to decline. I was hoping for a recovery to come back by testing day, and it just didn't happen. So what worked for the squat? I really felt that my dynamic effort training worked very well. Again, like I said, I was hitting numbers at the end of every block in my dynamic effort training when I would work up in weights that reflected my numbers should have went up. Even all the way through Circumax, when I got to that last week of heavy Circumax, I was feeling it. I didn't have a good max effort workout that week. I did fine, but it was a struggle on my heavy Circumax day. The next week for max effort, and then my subsequent deload, I really started to fall off. So do I think that the dynamic effort training worked? I'm going to have to say probably yes, but with that caveat, I'm not 100% certain because it didn't pan out on actual testing day. The other thing I put a lot of stock into was building up my hamstrings through using glute ham raises. My hamstrings definitely got stronger. Again, hard to tell if it really paid off because I didn't have it on testing day. My bench, again, dynamic effort training, I think paid off. I utilized bands in every single phase, which is not something that I like to do. But I felt I'm better for it in the end. I do think that it paid off. The other thing that I did along with Circumax was I did something called a cast iron template. I'm not going to go through it here. It was very high volume and heavy weight oriented. So probably more on the higher volume with one very heavy set in each workout. So that occurred on my heavy day, and then the cast iron, or then the dynamic effort occurred later at the end of the week. Those two things combined, I really do think helped out my bench. My tricep training, I didn't really feel helped a whole lot, so that's something that I might want to look at and trying to find a new way to train my triceps. Not necessarily a new way, but what do I need to change about that is something that I'll be looking more into. Could I have done things differently with my tricep specific training that would have helped out in my bench? Because I don't really think I got a ton out of that. But the cast iron took a lot out of me. The dynamic effort work took a lot out of me. So I don't know exactly how that'll fit in. All right, what coming out of the training, what are things that developed that I need to fix? Number one, what are the weaknesses that developed? Number two, what are the injuries that may have developed? They don't have to be major injuries, they could be small ones. As far as weaknesses, I'm going to go to the deadlift here. I didn't discuss that as far as what worked and what didn't because nothing really worked for my deadlift in the past 6 months. But as far as what's popped up, as far as weaknesses, we'll start with the squat. I can't really say that there's anything that has risen with the squat as far as weaknesses. But I will say that my hamstrings, I think, are the biggest thing that I always need to bring up. This, the way that I squat, I sit very far back. My shins are almost completely vertical. I have a decent amount of forward lean. So my hamstrings are the primary muscle group. I can't ever get them strong enough, so I need to continue working my hamstrings. Injury-wise for the squat, nothing really happened. Had very tight hip flexors at different points. That did bother me towards the end of training, going into testing as well. I was not quite feeling right in the bottom. My hip flexors were causing some tightness. Overall, probably not the issue that caused me not to do well, but it may have made a small difference. So that's something that I always need to be focused on. Make sure my hips have adequate flexibility. For the bench, okay, what popped up? Weakness-wise, I still think I need to develop my triceps. I think that's the biggest thing that I can do to improve my bench. You could also look at part of the movement. I'm probably weaker off the chest. So bringing in some things like heavy dumbbell bench, maybe more floor press, things of that nature. I've been doing a lot of wider grip, maximum legal grip, to develop more strength off the chest. I think I need to continue developing that strength off my chest. And then specific muscle group wise, as I've already discussed, build my triceps. For the deadlift, I tend to always veer on my low back being my biggest weakness. At this point, my low back, maybe. I still need to continue to work it. It's definitely something I don't want to let go. But I'm actually looking at my quads as being my weakness. I got a lot of my technical issues kind of hammered out through the last 6 months. But from a muscular standpoint, I have really neglected my quads, and I think starting off the floor, I need to get those quads stronger. So I'm going to probably bring in some Olympic squats, or some, as well as front squats, back squats, letting my knees travel forward and really focus on utilizing my quads to do that movement. And possibly some other narrower stance versions, maybe some narrower stance box squats with the safety squat bar that forces me to use my quads more. And then the last question that I ask myself, okay, is what happens next? Okay, what direction does this give me going into the future? And I kind of already hit on some of those things, but even from a programming standpoint, not just a muscular standpoint, you have to look at these things. So if I'm trying, I don't necessarily pull out or pick out specific goals. I don't necessarily say, I want my squat to be at this number in the next 6 months or the next year. So the goals, and some people, they need that. That's not something that I think helps me a whole lot, is to pick out specific numbers, especially being 46 years old. My eyes get bigger than what's possible. In my mind, I'm going to put 50 pounds on my squat just like I did when I was 20. Probably not something that's very doable. So I try to just give myself direction by what do I need to do next to continue making progress. In the last 6 months, I put a lot of emphasis on dynamic effort training. I think it was very beneficial. But in the process of doing that, I have limited time to train. So that meant that I was not getting in other things that I needed to get in, such as a good heavy Olympic squat day, which would normally fall on my Fridays, which became my dynamic effort squat and deadlift day. By the time I got done with that, I did not have time. If I wanted to do any assistance work at all, I did not have time to do more squatting, nor did I have the energy to do more squatting. So we're going to step away from the dynamic effort training. The same thing for the bench, in order to get more volume and more emphasis on building that low end. The same thing for the squat, on building some of the assistance work that I need for the squat. As far as the deadlift, having time to do those Olympic squats, I'm going to take a step away from dynamic effort training for the time being. Yes, I will bring it back in the future. But I think I need to step away from it now to get in some of these things that I have neglected over the past 6 months. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as forming direction for the future. Do I have it all laid out in a plan? No. Okay, that's going to be the next step. But by answering these questions, it shows me what I need to do. Okay, dynamic effort training went really well, but I'm missing these other elements of training that I need to get in. So I can't put them all in at the same time. I can't have everything there at once. So let's step back on on some things and bring these other new things in. So that's what I mean by forming that direction of training that I will be proceeding with in the future. Again, your questions that you ask yourself might not be exactly like mine, but you do need to think through these things objectively. Think through what you need in your training and what you've done in your training, and don't just look at it as, oh, well, I like that, so I'm going to do that. And I don't like this, so I'm not going to do that anymore. If you're really trying to make progress and you're serious about making progress, objectively think through these things and decide what needs to be there and what doesn't need to be there to help you make progress moving into the future. So, with that said, go out there and have a productive 2026, make progress, reach your goals, and remember, always be in the pursuit of strength.